Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and our guests today are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Good. And our man in Kiev, Ivan Kucherenko. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here today.
Tonight was a tragic night for Ukraine in Lviv, which is extreme west of Ukraine, as we know. There were missile attack by Russia. They used so-called Oreshnik, and the speed of this missile is 13,000 kilometers an hour. So it's virtually impossible to hit and intercept this missile. And there were devastating effects of that. And this is completely contradict the all efforts of getting the resolution, the peaceful resolution in this war. And apparently it's getting beyond any explanation how the negotiations are going on for about a year now, and Russia not only didn't make any concessions, they actually increasing their attacks against civilians. And unfortunately, that's the only thing what they can do, because on the battlefield, Ukrainians are taking over. Russians, with all these meat attacks and so on, they cannot make any progress. They can take a village or two, and then the Ukrainians are getting it back almost in the next day. Russians already got Kupiansk, and Putin announced himself that now we already have Kupiansk. And now in the latest speech, Putin argued that Kupiansk has to be taken in the next few weeks. So if you already took Kupiansk, so why do you have to take it over the next few weeks again? What's happened there? So this is really bizarre, but this is tragic news what's happened in Ukraine last night. And Ivan, I believe you have a video to show us.
Yeah, but before that, just to add that mostly attack was concentrated on Kiev. There
Yeah,
were more cruise and ballistic missiles on Kiev, actually, and more victims in Kiev. For now, it's 4 people dead and more than 20 people injured. And as for Oreshnik, well, what you have to know, it's actually intercontinental ballistic missile, and its main objective is to deliver nuclear warheads.
yes.
It's not adapted to use conventional warheads because, as you mentioned, its speed, its velocity is so high that conventional warheads will just explode during the flight because of the high temperature. So it was constructed for delivering nuclear warheads, and of course, Russia is not leveraging the stakes so high to attack Ukraine with the nuclear warheads. So they've just using that Oreshnik without any warheads at all. Just will with put some metal bullheads in it, and because of its great speed, and because of the capacity, because it can actually deliver several tons of capacity. The kinetic effect of this attack is pretty devastating. though, and Russians used to hit infrastructure object in Lviv. What also with it, and what also you have to know that it's actually Lviv is situated almost on the border with Poland. So if something could went wrong, as it sometimes was, Russians actually could hit NATO territory with the intercontinental ballistic missile. And no one knows whether this missile is empty, is without any nuclear warhead, or it is bringing nuclear warhead when this rocket is flying. And I think that a NATO response or this attack should be really straightforward and severe, and Russia should pay for it. And now we can watch the video actually about this night's attack and its consequences on Kyiv. So let's watch it.
Thank you, Ivan.
For the entirety of this 5-hour aerial attack, which started around 11 p.m., residents of the city experienced powerful building-shaking explosions. During this attack, Russia once again employed something that is known as the double-tap strike method. This is an attack in which the attacker strikes a target, pauses, and allows rescue teams to come in and assist the people who have been hurt, and then this pause is followed by a second, much more brutal attack in order to maximize casualties at the location.
Шахет влетів, я не знаю, як саме це сталося, влетів на 2 поверхи вище нас. Ми були вдома, спали з дітьми.
Якраз вкладав дитину в цей час, вона прокинулась, і побачив спишку за вікном, і звук скла.
Here we're at a double tap location. A double tap is when 2 missiles fly in just minutes apart. The first responder who lost his life tonight, his name was Serhiy. He was from temporarily occupied territory Nova Kakhovka. He had 1 son, 2 grandsons, and had just turned 57 in September. We were not able to get comments from his colleagues as they are visibly distraught. It's been a really difficult night for this team. This comes as Kyiv faces huge blackouts. The mayor of Kyiv announced that 19 people were injured and there are 4 confirmed deaths. We'll keep reporting on the situation.
No, it's horrible. Horrible to watch it. Absolutely.
I have maybe a partial explanation for what they are doing. In that a report that I viewed yesterday from one of the Ukrainian intelligence chiefs reported that the Russians are currently taking casualties, both in killed and wounded, which are now exceeding the Russian rate of reinforcement. Now, this has very strong implications. If the Russians are now taking casualties which are in the east, which are greater than their ability to replace them, they are becoming steadily weaker. They are not only losing offensive momentum, but they are becoming steadily more vulnerable to a counterattack. So not only can they not renew their offensive elsewhere, but they can't even maintain the offensive operations which they now have. in desperation, just as when during the Battle of Britain, when the British managed to hit Berlin, the enraged Hitler began focusing his attacks in on London, and that diverted attention away, of course, from the Royal Air Force. So this is a lashing out. The Russians have become increasingly desperate as their attacks are failing to gain any significant ground in the east, and as a result, they are, and the diplomatic negotiations are not going their way. The West is becoming more unified behind Ukraine, and you suggest what will be a logical response on the part of the United States. I do believe that they are strongly considering, and because reports also that President Trump is increasingly frustrated with Putin, so he may just decide to give them those tomahawks and let the Ukrainians strike back with those. And because the Ukrainians have certainly demonstrated they can reach Moscow with their drone attacks, and they are developing their own weapon systems such as Flamingo, which can also hit Moscow. And you might as well, at this point, if the Ukrainians are going to have the capability of hitting Moscow, and yet the Russians refuse to stop these other devastating attacks against civilian populations, which are not really true military targets, well, then you might as well give them the tomahawks, give them the means that they need to convince the Russians that this is not a winning proposition. It is not a useful one. And they will have to be held accountable. And the way you hold them accountable is by giving Ukraine the economic and military means to strike back.
I have yet an additional explanation of what Putin is trying to do. Lately, in the last few weeks, Putin is completely losing any influence in the world since his inability to protect his own friends, like, for example, someone by the name Maduro. So all this Russian C-300, C-400, C-1500, whatever, they became absolutely helpless against a strike of American force. So his inability to defend his own friends makes him irrelevant in international politics, and also situation with this Russian tanker. This is absolutely horrible situation where a tanker was chased from the Caribbean to Faroe Islands, which is between.
Actually, as for that tanker, Sasha, Jonathan, I've gotten my own interesting opinion, and I just want to share it with you.
Yeah.
That it's a really strange situation when this tanker was using registration of some far away islands, but when it has been chased by American Coastal Guard ship, then it changed their registration and their flag to Russian, which was not used before that in any other cases. And after that, Russians Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated, and they've said to American part to stop chasing this ship, but fortunately American Coastal Guards didn't give up. They continued chasing it, and they've captured it. They've chased it almost across all the Atlantic Ocean, and they've captured that ship near the coast actually of Great Britain, far away from Caribbean. And what is also remarkable, Russians sent a submarine and a naval ship to assist that tanker and prevent Americans from capturing it. I've got a question. What was on that tanker that it was so important for Russians that they've officially changed its registration, acknowledging that that Shadow Fleet tanker is actually Russian, and they've sent they've used their official Ministry of Foreign Affairs channels to ask United States not to stop chasing that tanker, and they've sent military ship and a submarine to protect that tanker. I'm not sure that it was trying to deliver some oil. Maybe there was something more important for Russia on that ship, that there were so much efforts about it. And obviously, I think that American intelligence knew about it as well, because they've just didn't give up, and despite the Russian notice to stop chasing that ship, they've continued to chase it over all the Atlantic, and then actually captured it. So I'm just curious of what was the actual cargo of that ship, and I hope that we will discover it in near future. What are your thoughts about it?
There are some funny details. First of all, when they had to hastily change name of the ship and flag and so on, so they did it by hands. So they had to cross the real name of the ship and put some Russian name on the ship, Mariner, I think, something like this. But the funniest thing is they didn't have Russian flag. So they had to paint some kind of material with what looks like a flag and raise it on the ship. And another interesting detail is that, as you know, this submarine and military ship, Russian warship, they were late to the moment, so the Americans already boarded this tanker. And the joke is that they were very, very lucky to be late, because they would be invaded by Americans just as well. So it was very good for them to be late.
Yeah. So this rather comical incident just illustrates the disparity in the difference between the ability of the United States to project power versus the Russian ability to respond. And they really are the Russian weakness in their ability to project power beyond their own local waters into international waters is clearly shown here. And it starkly illustrates why the United States was able to act with complete immunity in its own waters. It is a clear and very effective demonstration of President Trump's newly reinforced Monroe Doctrine. So in this case, the differences in power projection capability are clearly shown here. And yes, I too would be, if the intelligence community decides to ever make it public as to what the contents of that tanker were, as to why the United States was so adamant about pursuing that tanker, and that it's also impressive that the U.S. Coast Guard was able to project its power beyond local coastal waters. They were able to pursue in the Atlantic and say, "Oh my goodness, we didn't know they could do that." And so, you get
that situation actually, Jonathan, remind me Caribbean crisis. As you remember,
Yes.
Soviet Union that time, they also used civilian ships to deliver nuclear weapons to Cuba, actually, in order to make it in a stealth mode, in order for United States intelligence not to discover that they're delivering nuclear missiles to Cuba.
Yes.
And
well,
I've actually got some kind of deja vu, because Russians are so mad enough that they could actually try to deliver some tactical nuclear weapons or some other kind of weapons to Venezuela in order to blackmail United States in the future. So that, for my opinion, could be an option.
Yeah, what this also reminds me of, since you brought up the Cuban Missile Crisis, there are two things that I distinctly remember from my childhood about that, and because I was around at that time, and in the Cuban Missile Crisis, one thing that my parents did, because we lived at the time in St. Petersburg, Florida, very close to MacDill Air Force Base, which was a strategic air command base with which would have been an obvious target in the case they launched nuclear missiles from Cuba. In response, my parents, which I've only vaguely understood the reason why, they sent me and my younger brother into 120 miles away into the interior of Florida, into Sebring, 120 to my grandmother's house. We were to stay with my grandmother's house for 2 weeks. I actually started temporarily going to school there because they did not know if there was actually going to be a nuclear attack on the Tampa St. Petersburg area. So the other thing which I remember President Kennedy's speech, in which I looked at a recording of it recently just to refresh my memory, in the most famous statement that he made during that whole crisis, in which he said, "It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any missile launched from the island of Cuba as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, necessitating a full retaliatory response by the United States on the Soviet Union." That is, there's no ambiguity there. No hidden intention there. He stated exactly what was going to happen. So yes, yeah, that sort of thing. And this kind of international confrontation, although not quite nearly as serious, it still represents an escalation in the amount of tension and the amount of provocative actions which are going on. This is all of a piece. It is not. They are not done in isolation. The Russians are lashing out in desperation by increasing the violence of their attacks on Ukraine, and not against strictly military targets, because their military capability of conducting effective operations against Ukraine is steadily decreasing. And this increased casualty rate on the Eastern Front, beyond which is even worse for them than in World War II. Because in World War II, although the Russians took tremendous casualties, they were still able to punish the Germans a lot more. But in this case, the Ukraine, the defender, they are getting stronger, and they will soon have, as I have been discussing in previous programs, this latest report simply reinforces my belief that soon the Ukrainians will have that long-awaited opportunity to launch a decisive counteroffensive. Only the implication of these casualty reports is that the Ukrainians will pretty much be able to choose where. They won't be necessarily confined to Crimea. They could choose any one of the oblasts that they think would be most profitable for a counteroffensive and for liberating Ukrainian territory. And if they do that, that will also affect the political situation and will put even more pressure on Russia to, as I say, declare victory and go home, because the cost is becoming ever more prohibitive for the Russian army.
And don't forget that you mentioned that Ukraine is getting stronger and stronger. Almost every day they're getting more and more ammunition and the weapons from the West. They are getting now from France Mirage fighter jets, which would be a great threat to Russian fighter jets, because they have superior flying abilities and speed, more than twice the speed of sound, and they're multi-use fighter jets. They can carry up to 8 air-to-air missiles and 5 air-to-ground missiles. So this would be excellent, and just another yet weapon. And also Sweden sending their own, starting with the interceptors, also with the radar carrying Air Force plane. So Ukraine, plus it's increasing the production of more and more weapons on its own, which have
In particular, drones.
drones, sea drones also. Even, believe it or not, Canada ordered some of the Ukrainian drones and sea drones just in case to protect our prime minister from Trump, because our prime minister is not a very good friend of Trump. So to make him friendly,
That can change. Yeah. The President Trump that was scolding Zelensky last March now months later he's talking about speaking much more kindly about Zelensky, and just as easily that can change. Like I once said long ago on this program, if you don't like what President Trump is doing, wait 10 minutes.
yeah,
Wait for the next day and
wait the next day.
for his mood when he will wake up the next day and will not remember what he has done on the previous day.
Or he say, oh, well, the truth changed.
situation change. Yeah, people have to adapt to a new situation, new information, and they cannot say one thing and keep it on for a number of years. They have to be adaptable. So that's what hopefully we will see.
That's what President Trump is doing. Hey, so this is it's fascinating to watch. Dangerous to be involved in, but fascinating to watch.
Now, speaking about Putin's political situation, it's not just Maduro. Watch what's happening in Iran. Iran is the greatest friendly power, and now Ayatollah Khamenei already, I think, is buying tickets to fly to Moscow to join all these leaders from Syria, Assad, and others. So he will
getting crowded.
Yeah, it's going to be quite crowded. So Iran is getting to a situation. More and more people now want the Shah's son to return to Iran and head the new government of Iran. And he already said that Iranian people want him to return and head the government. He will do so. And we'll see how that will develop. So Iran is getting very desperate, and there is no way that Putin can somehow affect of what's happening in Iran one way or another. He has absolutely no military power, political power, or anything to do about the situation in Iran.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, this is a perfect illustration of what happens when you have a nation that is incapable of projecting military power in any meaningful way into areas beyond its immediate borders. I mean, Russia although it ostensibly has great military power for defending itself, possibly, they don't necessarily have to worry about that. But compared to the global projection power of the United States, it's minuscule. And President Trump is reinforcing this by his actions in various countries. And so it's a reassertion. Now, as to how effectively the United States can do this over the long term will be a function of how well President Trump's economic program works, how the tax cuts and all these other actions he have taken. And this is only going to become clear during this year, because by their own calculations, the Trump administration is counting upon its various economic stimulation measures to have their full effect in a way that the American public will understand by the summer of 2026. And if that happens, then they are in a much stronger position going into the midterm elections into November 2026. So that is a wait and see type of situation. And that is what the Trump administration is counting upon. And there is no real reason at this point to say that they are wrong. We have to watch the economic figures carefully. We have to look at various observations and other actions that the Trump administration will take in order to strengthen its economic policies and in turn strengthen their military power.
I'd like to mention before we end our program today, I would like to mention that I noticed slowly lately how Ukrainian position in the peace negotiations is changing. So remember that first Russia insisted that the Ukrainian army cannot be more than 80,000 people several months ago, right? Today, Ukraine demands it has to be 800,000 people army. Also, now they're not just talking about the territories. What territories? There is a border, internationally recognized border between Ukraine and Russia of 1991. That's what is Ukrainian aim, is to get back to the borders. Forget about the territories you're talking about, some Donbass or this or that. Forget it. It's no starter even. So now it's a border. So while Russians they cannot even meaningfully to respond to any proposals from the West, from the US, from Ukraine, they're numb and they don't know what to do. Ukraine is slowly ratchet it objections, and we'll see what's going to happen. Right now, I'm not aware of any further negotiations, but more and more West, including even US, getting behind Ukraine, and Zelensky feels more power almost every day. And now he has a high moral ground when you see when Russian bandits are killing civilians, defenseless people, women, children, older people. And Zelensky, he attacks the only military objects, refineries, and something that helps Putin to conduct the war. We'll see what's happened, because Putin also realizes that when there is all his oil and gas business is going to be basically killed. I expect this month something will happen that he will not be able to even continue his financial efforts to continue the war. So it's getting worse and worse for him. So he's better come to the table real soon and try to end this, because there is no progress on the front line. He's continued to the terroristic attacks against Ukraine, and that's all what he's trying to do. It's not going to bring him victory, not at all. Well, with that, I would like to thank you so much for today's program. Ivan, for your videos. Jonathan, thanks so much as always. And have a great weekend, and hope to see you all on Tuesday, same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.